The day a homeless veteran saluted his judge. What Frank Caprio did next will shatter you. And I'll never forget the sound of metal hitting the courtroom floor. It wasn't the gavel, it wasn't handcuffs, it was dog tags, military dog tags, sliding across the polished marble as a homeless veteran collapsed to his knees, sobbing so hard his entire body convulsed. Judge Frank Caprio was already out from behind the bench, his black robes billowing as he rushed toward the man, and what happened in the next 17 minutes restored my faith not just in the justice system, but in humanity itself. The morning of November 8th started cold in Providence. The kind of cold that cuts through your coat and settles in your bones. I'd been covering Judge Caprio's courtroom for 6 years by then, and I thought I'd seen everything. The single mothers who couldn't afford parking tickets, the elderly folks on fixed incomes facing fines they'd never pay off, the students who made stupid mistakes. Judge Caprio handled them all with a grace and compassion that made him beloved not just in Rhode Island, but across the country through his viral courtroom videos. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for James Robert Sullivan. He walked into courtroom 6A at 9:42 a.m., and I knew immediately he was military. You can always tell. Despite the ragged clothes, despite the dirt-stained backpack, despite the beard that hadn't seen a razor in months, he walked with that bearing. Straight back, measured steps, eyes that scanned the room, assessing exits and threats even though he was just in a municipal courtroom. He wore an old army jacket, desert camouflage pattern faded to almost gray, with corporal stripes barely visible on the sleeve. His boots were military issue, worn through at the soles, held together with wire and duct tape. On his head, a tattered baseball cap with an embroidered American flag, and around his neck, hanging on a ball chain worn smooth with years of handling, dog tags. The gallery was fuller than usual that morning, about 40 people waiting for various cases. When James walked in, several people physically moved away from him. I saw a woman pull her purse closer. A man covered his nose. The smell of someone who'd been living on the streets for too long preceded James like an invisible warning. He didn't seem to notice, or maybe he'd stopped caring. He took a seat in the back row, as far from everyone else as possible, and sat at attention. Back straight, hands on his knees, eyes forward, waiting for his case to be called like he was waiting for orders. Case number 2024 TM09156, the clerk announced 2 hours later. City of Providence versus James Robert Sullivan, sleeping in a vehicle parked in a restricted zone. James stood immediately, military precision in every movement, and walked to the defendant's podium. As he passed my seat in the press box, I caught a glimpse of his face up close. Weathered beyond his years, I'd later learn he was only 39, but he looked 60. His eyes were a startling blue, clear and intelligent, but haunted. Deep shadows underneath. The kind of eyes that have seen too much and can't unsee it. Judge Caprio looked up from the paperwork and froze. His expression changed instantly. I'd seen it happen before when something caught his attention, but this was different. The judge's eyes moved from James's face to the army jacket to the dog tags, and I saw recognition flash across his features, not of the man, but of what he represented. "Good morning," Judge Caprio said, his voice already softer than it had been with the previous case. "Mr. Sullivan, is it?" "Yes, sir. Your Honor, sir." James's voice was hoarse, but steady. Military formal. "Mr. Sullivan, I see here you were cited for sleeping in your vehicle in a no-parking zone near Roger Williams Park. The citation was issued at 2:30 a.m. on October 19th. The fine is $125 plus court costs. Can you tell me what happened that night?" James stood perfectly still, eyes forward like he was reporting to a commanding officer. "Sir, I was attempting to sleep in my vehicle, sir. I was unaware of the parking restrictions in that area. I take full responsibility for the violation." "Where do you live, Mr. Sullivan?" A pause. A long pause. James's jaw tightened, and I saw his hands grip the sides of the podium. "I live in my vehicle, Your Honor." How long have you been homeless? 2 years, 7 months, and 13 days, sir. The precision of that answer hit me like a punch. He'd been counting. Every single day. Judge Caprio leaned forward, removing his reading glasses. Mr. Sullivan, I notice your jacket. You served in the military? Yes, sir. United States Army. Served 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. Honorably discharged in 2018, sir. What was your rank? Corporal, sir. Combat engineer, 10th Mountain Division. Judge Caprio's face shifted into something I'd rarely seen, a mixture of respect, sorrow, and barely contained anger. Not at James, but at the situation. At the system that allowed men who'd served their country to end up sleeping in cars in parking lots. Combat engineer, the judge repeated quietly. That's dangerous work. Very dangerous work. Yes, sir. We cleared IEDs, sir. Improvised explosive devices. Built forward operating bases. Constructed roads through hostile territory. James spoke in that clipped military way. Just the facts, no emotion. But I could hear something underneath. Pride, maybe. Or the memory of pride. Were you injured during your service? James hesitated. His hands tightened on the podium until his knuckles went white. Not physically, sir. Not in ways you can see. The courtroom had gone completely silent. Every person in that gallery was locked in on this exchange. The woman who'd pulled her purse away earlier had tears in her eyes. The man who'd covered his nose was leaning forward, listening intently. Judge Caprio nodded slowly. PTSD? Yes, sir. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Also diagnosed with severe anxiety and major depressive disorder. I receive treatment at the VA when I can get there, sir. When you can get there? Why can't you get there regularly? Transportation, sir. The VA hospital is in Providence, but sometimes I have to park farther out where I won't get citations. It's a long walk, and sometimes... He paused, swallowing hard. Sometimes I can't leave my vehicle, sir. Can't make myself get out. The anxiety gets too severe. Judge Caprio's eyes were glistening now. I'd seen him tear up before, but this was different. This was personal. Mr. Sullivan, help me understand something. You served your country. You put your life on the line for all of us. How did you end up homeless? And that's when the dam broke. James's military bearing crumbled. His shoulders sagged. His head dropped. And when he looked back up at Judge Caprio, his eyes were swimming with tears. I couldn't hold a job, sir. His voice cracked. After I got out, I tried. God knows I tried. I got hired at a construction company. Figured my engineering skills would transfer. Lasted 3 months. Every loud noise was a gunshot. Every pile of dirt was hiding an IED. I had a panic attack on site. Full breakdown. Paramedics had to be called. They let me go the next week. The tears were falling now, dropping onto his faded jacket. Tried warehouse work. Lasted 6 weeks. Too many people, too much chaos, couldn't handle it. Tried night security, thought being alone would help. But the night is when the memories come. When I close my eyes, I'm back there. I'm back in Kandahar watching my friends. He couldn't finish. His voice just stopped. I burned through my savings in 8 months. Lost my apartment. Lived with a cousin for a while, but I was having nightmares, screaming in my sleep, waking up his kids. He asked me to leave. Didn't blame him. I wouldn't want me around my kids either. Judge Caprio stood up from the bench, something I'd only seen him do a handful of times. Mr. Sullivan, look at me. James raised his head, tears streaming down his weathered face. You are not a burden. You are not broken. You are a soldier dealing with invisible wounds from serving your country. Do you understand me? This is not your fault. James shook his head violently. But it is, sir. I should be stronger. I should be able to handle this. Other guys from my unit, they came home and they were fine. They have families, jobs, houses. Why can't I do that? What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. Judge Caprio's voice rose with emotion, echoing through the courtroom. Everyone processes trauma differently. There is no shame in struggling. There is no shame in having PTSD. You went to war for us, and you came home carrying wounds we can't see. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you human. James was sobbing openly now, his whole body shaking. He reached up and grabbed his dog tags, clutching them like a lifeline. "I just want to stop feeling like this, sir. I'm so tired. I'm so tired of being scared all the time, of not being able to sleep, of jumping at every sound. I'm tired of living in my car, of trying to find places to park where cops won't bother me, of using gas station bathrooms to wash up, of people looking at me like I'm trash." His voice rose to almost a shout. "I served my country. I did everything they asked. I watched my friends die. I nearly died myself a dozen times. And this is what I get? Living in a 2002 Honda Accord, eating out of dumpsters behind grocery stores, getting parking tickets I can't pay because I'm trying to find a safe place to sleep for one goddamn night?" The dog tags slipped from his hand and hit the floor with that metallic sound I'll never forget. And then James dropped to his knees, his face in his hands, sobbing so hard he could barely breathe. Judge Caprio was already moving. He came around the bench, his robes flowing behind him, and he didn't stop at a professional distance. He knelt right down on that courtroom floor next to James Sullivan, his hands on the man's shoulders. "I've got you, son," Judge Caprio said, his own voice thick with tears. "I've got you. You're not alone anymore." James looked up at the judge through tears, disbelief on his face. "Why do you care? You don't even know me." "I know enough," Judge Caprio said fiercely. "I know you're a veteran. I know you served. I know you're suffering. And I know that this country you fought for, has failed you. But I'm not going to fail you. Not today. Not ever." The judge helped James to his feet, then did something I've never seen in any courtroom anywhere. He took off his own suit jacket from under his robes and wrapped it around James's shoulders. "This ticket is dismissed," Judge Caprio announced, his voice ringing through the silent courtroom. "Not reduced, dismissed completely. And I want it noted in the record that Corporal James Robert Sullivan served this country with honor and should never have been cited in the first place." But he wasn't done. Not even close. "Linda," he called to his clerk, "get me the number for Operation Stand Down Rhode Island. And call Colonel Patterson at the VA. His personal number, I have it in my office. Tell him Judge Caprio needs to speak with him immediately about an emergency case." He turned back to James, who was staring at him in shock. "Mr. Sullivan, do you have your DD-214? Your military discharge papers?" "In my car, sir. I keep them with me always." "Good. Here's what's going to happen. You're not leaving this courthouse until I have a plan in place for you. I'm calling in every favor I have. We're getting you into housing today. Not a shelter. Actual housing. Operation Stand Down has transitional apartments for veterans. I'm getting you into one of them." "Sir, I can't afford..." "It's free. That's what it's there for. It's for veterans exactly like you who need help getting back on their feet." Judge Caprio pulled out his phone. Judges almost never use phones in court, but Frank Caprio has never been like other judges. "I'm also calling the VA to get you into accelerated treatment. No more sporadic visits when you can manage transportation. Real, consistent care, therapy, medication if you need it, whatever it takes." James was shaking his head, tears still flowing. "I don't understand. Why are you doing this?" Judge Caprio's voice softened. "My father fought in World War II. He landed at Normandy on D-Day. Saw things that haunted him for the rest of his life. Back then, they didn't have a name for PTSD. They just called it shell shock and told men to be tough, to get over it. My father struggled for years. I watched him fight battles in his sleep, watched him jump at loud noises, watched him struggle to hold down work." The judge's eyes were red now, his voice thick with emotion. "But my father had something you don't have. He had a community that wrapped around him. He had the GI Bill. He had neighbors who understood. He had a country that was still grateful, still paying attention. Somewhere between then and now, we forgot. We forgot that when we send young men and women to war, they come home changed. And we owe you, more than a parking ticket and a cold night in a car. James's legs buckled and Judge Caprio caught him, holding him steady. "I don't deserve this," James whispered. "Yes, you do. You deserve so much more than this." Judge Caprio looked out at the courtroom, at the 40 people who'd been watching this entire exchange in stunned silence. "Does anyone here work with Veterans Services? Anyone have contacts with job placement programs?" A man in the third row stood up. "Your Honor, I'm a veteran myself, Marine Corps. I run a small construction company. If Mr. Sullivan is interested, I'd be honored to offer him a position. We work with several vets. We understand PTSD. We make accommodations." A woman near the back stood. "Your Honor, I work for a nonprofit that provides furniture and household items to people transitioning out of homelessness. If Mr. Sullivan is getting an apartment, we can furnish it completely, free of charge." Another man stood. "I own a dental practice. I'd like to offer free dental care. I noticed, if Mr. Sullivan needs any dental work, it's covered." One by one, people stood up. A woman who ran a food bank, a man who owned a clothing store, a therapist who offered pro bono counseling, a woman who simply stood and said, "I'd like to pay for a year of his car insurance and registration so he doesn't lose his vehicle." I was typing frantically on my laptop, tears streaming down my face, trying to capture every word. Around me, the entire courtroom had erupted in a spontaneous outpouring of support. The bailiff was crying. The stenographer had stopped typing and was wiping her eyes. The security guard at the door was standing at attention, saluting James. James looked around the courtroom in complete disbelief, turning in a slow circle to see all these people, strangers who'd been in line for their own court cases, standing up for him. His hand went to his chest, over his heart, and he whispered, I can't." Judge Caprio gripped his shoulder. "Yes, you can. You can accept help. That's not weakness, James. That's wisdom. You've been fighting alone for too long. Let us fight with you." James straightened up, and through his tears, he did something that made every person in that courtroom lose it completely. He saluted Judge Frank Caprio. A crisp, perfect military salute, holding it as tears poured down his face. Judge Caprio, a civilian who'd never served, returned the salute with as much respect as he could manage. "Thank you for your service, Corporal Sullivan. Thank you for your sacrifice. And thank you for having the courage to keep fighting, even when it felt like there was nothing left to fight for." The courtroom erupted in applause. Not the polite golf clap you sometimes hear in court, but real applause, standing ovation applause. People were cheering, crying, clapping. The sound echoed off the marble walls and wood paneling. James stood there, overwhelmed, covering his face with his hands as his shoulders shook with sobs, but different sobs than before. These weren't the sobs of despair. These were the sobs of a man who'd been drowning and just felt solid ground under his feet for the first time in years. Judge Caprio called for a 15-minute recess, cleared his courtroom of everyone except James, and spent the next hour, way longer than 15 minutes, making phone calls. I stayed because he asked me to, said he wanted a witness to what was about to happen. I watched Judge Frank Caprio, who had 40 more cases to get through that day, put everything on hold to make 17 phone calls, to the VA, to Operation Stand Down, to his personal friends in real estate, to the commander of the local VFW, to a psychiatrist who specialized in PTSD, to the Rhode Island Department of Veterans Affairs. By the time those calls were finished, James had a studio apartment in a transitional housing facility for veterans available immediately, a job offer from the Marine Corps Veterans Construction Company starting whenever he was ready, a complete mental health treatment plan with twice-weekly therapy and psychiatric care at the VA, furniture, kitchen supplies, bedding, and towels being delivered that afternoon, a voucher for $500 worth of clothing from a local store, 3 months of food from the food bank, free dental and medical care, car insurance paid for a full year, and a personal phone number, Judge Caprio's personal cell phone, with instructions to call if he needed anything at all. "You're going to have bad days," Judge Caprio told James as they sat in the judge's chambers. I was taking notes, but trying to be invisible. "You're going to have days where the PTSD is overwhelming, where you don't want to get out of bed, where you feel like you're back in that dark place. On those days, I want you to call me. Not your caseworker, not the VA crisis line. You call me. You understand?" James nodded, clutching a piece of paper with the judge's number written in Frank Caprio's own handwriting. "You're going to want to give up. You're going to feel like you're a burden, like you don't deserve this help. On those days, I want you to remember something." Judge Caprio leaned forward, looking James directly in the eyes. "You earned this. You earned every bit of help you're getting and more. You gave years of your life to this country. You sacrificed your peace of mind, your mental health, your sense of safety. The very least this country can do is make sure you have a roof over your head and food in your stomach." "Why me?" James asked quietly. "There are thousands of homeless veterans. Why did you do all this for me?" Judge Caprio was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant. "My father used to have nightmares. I'd hear him screaming in the middle of the night, my mother trying to calm him down. He'd wake up not knowing where he was, sometimes thinking he was back in France, back in the war. One night when I was about 12, he told me something I never forgot." The judge's voice grew thick. He said, "Frank, when you go to war, you leave a piece of yourself on that battlefield. You come home, but you're never whole again, never completely the same. And the people who haven't been there, they'll never understand. They'll never understand what it's like to carry ghosts with you everywhere you go." Judge Caprio looked at James with profound compassion. "I can't understand what you've been through. I haven't walked in your boots, but I can honor my father's memory by making sure that when a veteran walks into my courtroom, he leaves with more than he came in with. I can make sure that the ghosts you carry don't have to be carried alone." James broke down again, and this time Judge Caprio just let him cry, one hand on his shoulder, silent support. 3 months later, I got a call from Judge Caprio asking if I'd like to do a follow-up story. When I arrived at his chambers, James was there, but a completely different James. He'd gained healthy weight. His hair was cut, his beard neatly trimmed. He wore clean jeans and a button-down shirt. Most striking was his eyes. They were still haunted, still carried shadows, but there was light in them now. Hope. "I wanted you to hear this from James himself," Judge Caprio said, smiling. James told me everything. The first night in the apartment, he'd stood in the middle of the empty living room and cried for an hour, overwhelmed by having walls around him, a door that locked, a bathroom that was his and his alone. The furniture arrived, and volunteers from the nonprofit spent hours helping him set everything up, treating him with dignity and respect he hadn't felt in years. The therapy was hard, brutal even, digging into trauma he'd buried deep. But his therapist was a veteran herself, and she understood. The medication helped level out the worst of the anxiety and depression. He still had bad days, days where he couldn't leave the apartment, where the sounds of traffic outside became gunfire, where he woke up screaming. But on those days, he had Judge Caprio's number, and he'd used it. 3 times in the first month, he'd called in the middle of a panic attack, and Judge Caprio had talked him through it. Sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for an hour. A sitting judge, taking personal calls from a homeless veteran he'd met in court. The construction job was going well. His boss was patient, understanding. When James had a bad day, they let him work alone on quieter projects. They gave him headphones to block out triggering sounds. They treated him like the skilled engineer he was, not like a charity case. "I'm not fixed," James said clearly. "I don't know if I'll ever be fixed. The PTSD isn't going away. The memories aren't going away. But I'm managing. I'm surviving. And for the first time in almost 3 years, I'm not just surviving, I'm actually living. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his dog tags, holding them up. I used to grab these when I was spiraling, trying to remember who I was, trying to hold on to something real. Now when I grab them, I remember that day in court. I remember Judge Caprio kneeling next to me on that floor. I remember all those people standing up to help, and I remember that I'm not alone anymore. James looked at Judge Caprio with profound gratitude. You saved my life, sir. I was 3 weeks away from ending it. I had a plan. I was just waiting for the right moment. If I'd paid that parking ticket and walked out of court that day with nothing else, I wouldn't be here right now. I need you to know that. You literally saved my life. Judge Caprio's eyes filled with tears, and he reached over to grip James's hand. You saved your own life by having the courage to keep showing up. I just opened some doors. You're the one who walked through them, but James shook his head. No, sir. Respectfully, no. I couldn't walk through those doors alone. I'd tried. I'd been trying for years. What you did, what all those people did, you showed me that asking for help wasn't surrender. You showed me that accepting support wasn't weakness. You gave me permission to stop fighting alone. A year later, James called me directly. He wanted me to know he'd moved out of transitional housing into his own apartment. A real lease, his name on it. He'd been promoted at work to site supervisor. He was taking classes at the community college working toward an engineering degree. And he'd started volunteering at the VA, talking to other veterans struggling with PTSD, sharing his story, offering hope. I tell them about Judge Caprio, James said. I tell them that sometimes, when you're drowning, someone throws you a rope, and all you have to do is grab it. Judge Caprio threw me a rope. Hell, he dove in the water and pulled me to shore. Now I'm learning how to throw ropes to other people. James had also reconnected with his family. His cousin, the one who'd asked him to leave, reached out after seeing him doing better. They'd reconciled. James was having dinner with them every Sunday, building relationships with his nieces and nephews, becoming part of the family again. I'm not the same person I was before Afghanistan, James told me. I never will be, but I'm learning that's okay. I don't have to be that person. I can be this person, someone who survived trauma, who struggled, who fell, and who got back up with help. Maybe that person is stronger than the old me ever was. I asked him about the dog tags. Did he still carry them? Every day, he said, pulling them out from under his shirt. But now they don't just remind me of what I lost. They remind me of what I found. A judge who cared enough to help, a community that came together and proof that even when you hit rock bottom, you can climb back up. Judge Frank Caprio never sought publicity for what he did that day. He never mentioned James in interviews, never used the story to promote himself. When I asked permission to write about it, he only agreed if James was comfortable with it. This isn't about me, Judge Caprio insisted. This is about showing people that we can't forget our veterans, that the system is broken, that too many people who served our country are falling through the cracks, and that we all have a responsibility to catch them. He leaned forward, passionate. James wasn't an exception. He shouldn't have been special. Every veteran should walk into every courtroom, every government office, every institution in this country, and be treated with the respect and support they've earned. What I did shouldn't be remarkable, it should be standard. That's the real story. But here's what I know after covering courts for decades. What Judge Frank Caprio did that day was remarkable. Not because it should be, but because in the real world it so rarely happens. Most homeless veterans get their tickets, pay their fines or do their time, and disappear back into invisibility. Most judges don't have the time, resources, or frankly the compassion to see beyond the case file to the human being. Frank Caprio saw James Sullivan, really saw him, saw past the smell and the dirty clothes and the circumstances, saw a soldier, saw someone's son, saw a human being in crisis who needed help, not punishment. And he didn't just see him, he acted. He used his position, his connections, his personal cell phone number, his own time and emotional energy to make sure this veteran got what he needed. That's not just justice. That's humanity. That's what restores faith, not in the system, but in people. In the possibility that someone might care enough to help, even when they don't have to. I'm Adam Broderick, and I've reported on thousands of court cases. I've seen criminals sentenced, victims vindicated, laws applied and misapplied. But the day I watched Judge Frank Caprio kneel on a courtroom floor to comfort a crying veteran, the day I watched a gallery of strangers spontaneously come together to help someone they'd never met, the day I watched James Sullivan salute a judge who'd given him his life back, that's the day I understood what justice could be when it's mixed with compassion. That's the day my faith in humanity was restored. And every time I doubt whether individual actions matter, whether one person can make a difference, I think about James Sullivan living in his Honda Accord, counting the days of his homelessness, 3 weeks from ending his life. And then I think about him now, working, healing, helping others, living, all because one judge asked, "What happened?" and cared enough to do something about the answer. That's the story. That's why it matters. That's why I'll never forget the sound of those dog tags hitting the courtroom floor or the sight of Judge Caprio's suit jacket wrapped around a homeless veteran's shoulders, or the echo of 40 people standing up at once to help a stranger, because that's humanity at its best. And we need that reminder now more than ever.